Hello, everyone. Just as you log in, please make sure your first, last name, organization, your institution. Also, make sure you have your district and your certification or membership on there so we can help sort that out at the end. That would be hugely helpful. Also, reminder, just make sure you have plans that have your cameras on, because we want to make sure everyone in attendance has their camera running during the session. We'll get started shortly. Thank you.
Hey Josh, are you good if I say something before we get started?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so just want to remind people real quick, with the mentorship and program with mentors and mentees, we're going to refresh after convention. So if you would like to be a mentor or a mentee currently in the program, want to be reassigned next year, please send me an email and we'll refresh that after convention. Also, there's the like member game night. If you guys want to attend that, if you're around. As always, if you see us walking around the convention hall with like the ask me about the mentorship program, little tags on our IDs, any one of those people can answer questions about the mentorship program or these Zoom calls. And then my other big plug is, I have two actually. I sent out a survey. So if you've attended any of these Zooms, I sent out a survey link. Please fill that out. It helps us with next year's themes. And then also just gives us feedback of like what we can do to change the formatting, what we can do better. And then my last plug is if you want to be a panelist, I might create a different kind of form for that. So that we can get more variety on these panels, because right now it's just the program, we're setting up the Zoom call, so it's kind of like our network. So we'd like to get a little bit outside of our network. So if you are interested in being a panelist, please message us, or I'll send out a little survey link and you guys can sign up on that. That is all I have.
All right, we'll get started here in a few minutes. Just as a reminder for everyone popping in, make sure you got your first and last name listed along with your institution, organization, and also what district you're in. That is hugely helpful. And if you are certified or a member, please have that listed. If you need an example, just check the chat and you can see everyone updating there of what you should have listed here. Just helps with attendance and back end of it. Saves us a ton of time being able to do this type of stuff. So we'll get started in about a minute here. All right, let's get started. Thanks for joining, everybody. Appreciate everyone hopping on and getting everything updated. Exciting week ahead for those of us traveling to convention here. But glad we were able to get together and have a productive session today. As you can see from the title, our big thing we're working on today is our policies and procedures. A lot of us have done them in the past. A lot of us wish they had time to do them. I think the biggest thing is how everyone's using them and what benefit can you have from having an updated one. So let's jump in and get started. Just a few updates from myself and what we're doing at Uncommon. As always, this is a great time of year. Your bags and boxes are showing up with gear. If you need to get rid of any, please let us know. We have bags and boxes going in. We have about 3,000 pounds coming in every week. It's a busy time of season for us. So we have a huge goal. It's a really ambitious one, but we'd like to get at least one donation from every institution this year. Would be a huge win. We're trying to get to 800,000 pounds by the end of the year here. Definitely need your help to do that. For those of you that don't have the time to do a surplus sale, equipment sale, please let you know that we are offering that as a service too. And reach out to us if you have questions on that. We have our mission trip leaves a week from Friday. We'll be sending some students and staff to Kenya, which would be great to follow along there. Make sure you follow along on our social media channels, and we'd be glad to keep you updated as we go through that. At convention, know that we're hosting the Fellowship of Equipment Managers Monday and Tuesday morning. The information's in the convention schedule. Feel free to join us. It's really kind of low key. We have some actual fellow equipment managers doing some devotionals. It's just a good time to get to know other people in that realm. Also, we are hosting a laundry service event on the 4th, that last kind of night there. If you're interested in doing community service, getting to do something a little bit different at convention, please contact me. I can get you the information or stop by and see us at the booth. Lastly, CWS, our Christians Working in Sports Conference, is at the end of June. We still have registration open. So if you're interested in coming to Minneapolis and joining us for that, let us know and we'll be glad to get you signed up. So as I've said twice, and I'll say it 3 times just to make sure everyone's good, please make sure you got your first, last name listed, school organization, your district is big, and then certified, not certified. The biggest thing is just make sure your cameras are on, guys. It helps us out a bunch with making sure that this remains an option for us to have CEUs coming this way. So, and if you haven't done this before, we do have the QR code that you can scan. So if you want to have your phone out, get logged in and that kind of thing, be ready to do that at the end and grab that QR code for your CEUs. Again, convention starts soon. After convention, I know big deal is to put together a new schedule, get it out to you guys so you guys can have a big piece of that, involved with the upcoming year. Really help out all of us if you can go ahead and let us know what sessions you're looking for. If you want to be a panelist, please let Katie know as you see her at convention how to be involved in that. That'd be a big deal of getting things situated for the upcoming year there. So, and also the mentor, we don't need to talk about it again, but please contact Katie if you are interested as we revamp that and get things going again after convention. Okay, so as we get started with this panel today, it's a big panel. It's awesome that we're able to get a lot of people getting advice from all over the board as far as policies and procedures, because as you know, different sizes and with different institutions and everyone has kind of a different way of doing things. So it's good to get feedback from everybody. So our panel today, is Larry here? I haven't seen him pop in yet.
I'm on.
Okay. Hey, Larry. So Larry's joining us from Kansas. Thanks for joining in, Larry. Katie is going to be joining us from Colorado State. John, you're here from Idaho. Ariana from UC Davis, and Javon coming in from Mount Sac. So thanks, guys, for being on the panel. We'll try to stick to that order, and we'll start with the questions. If you do have other questions as we come through, please send them into the chat, and I'll do my best to kind of filter. If I don't say it right away, it's because maybe that question's coming up and we'll get to the end. But please, as you come up with questions, I want to hear some different feedback. Please share that with us. All right, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Larry, we'll start with you and then go to Katie. Larry, what is the value of having, departmental policies and procedures for you, and how do you go about ensuring your staff to, adhere to the said policies that you have in place?
Thanks, Josh. And I appreciated having a chance to look at these before we got rolling. I a couple of bullets on this. I said consistency. This is something that when in doubt, you fall back on this. I think for any of us, these are our core values in the equipment room, and what we fall back on. Some of it's our pet peeves, just that things are put away and sorted in a certain way. So what these things are, and what helps advance your operation. It also gives you a defensible position when you establish these. Have your students acknowledge them, revisit them, have them sign off on them, whatever the case may be, especially with your administration, that yes, we work towards these, we talk about these when certain situations happen in the last year regarding gambling and some situations at other schools. I got a lot of questions on what we educate our student managers on and those details. And to be able to go back and say, yes, they've had education on this, they've signed off on it, just checked some boxes with our administration that we were handling those duties. So I think from that standpoint, it's consistency and acknowledgement, defensible position with your administration, and also giving some core values to what you expect of your staff every day.
That's awesome, Larry. Thank you. Katie, would you mind chiming in?
Yeah, I think so. We're actually currently going through and redoing our policies and procedures. And on our end, like we've had quite a bit of turnover on staff members the last couple of years. So for us, it's been really good of like realizing and putting pen to paper of like what we do every day. We're working on our procedures of like monthly, like for basketball in the month of January, I do this, in February, I do this, and really like putting pen to paper of like what we actually do every day. And we've shared that with some of our administrators, and we're going to be sharing that with more of them, like having them see what we actually do every day has been enlightening for them, I think, a little bit. But also it helps us realize, like, put it all in one spot. When I got here, there was no policies and procedures. There were no like handbook, good to know, like who do you contact? Who do we buy this from? Who do we buy this from? So putting that all in one place is really helpful for not only your current staff, but like if you were to leave and someone take over, it's an easier like bridge the gap. Like, the equipment managers are very tight in a community. Helping out the next person who might take over as you move on to your next job is never a bad thing. And as far as like staff, like outside of our equipment staff, sharing with coaches our policies on returning items. We have some pieces of gear that must be returned, and like making sure that they understand our policy and why our policy is in that place, and breaking down the cost of things. Like, okay, if we were to never collect this is the cost coming out of your guys' budget. And once you show that number of what you're wasting every year, they sing a different tune. So I think like communicating and showing and having it written down is really helpful for staff to understand like what we do and the extent of what we're doing every day.
Great. Thanks, Katie. John, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Katie on that. When we got here, there wasn't a whole lot written down. We've kind of slowly started building that. Like she said, once we started breaking everything down for coaches, you drastically see a change in their attitude when you're telling them, hey, this is going to hit your budget and you're not going to be happy because there goes X, Y, and Z. And kind of like what Larry said, I mean, we meet with our kids before we even hire them, kind of explain like, hey, can you follow these simple rules? Like, here's what we expect of you guys every day. Here's what we expect you at practices to be doing, all that kind of stuff. You know, and then we have, when we get into fall camp, stuff like that for football, we sit down and meet with them again. We meet with our compliance office. That way the kids understand they have to sign everything as they're basically a full-time employee. We treat them like that. We want them to understand, like, hey, you do this, some of these things you are never going to be able to work again. So just kind of explain that, making sure that they're adhering to all, you know, the university policies, the NCAA policies, that kind of stuff. We want to make sure that everybody is on the same playing field. There is no gray line in some of this stuff. So you guys need to make sure you're on the right side of that. So just talking with them, I mean, we've had meetings with students before on our expectations we have in the equipment room, not only that, but then also with the university. So just working with those and making sure that they understand everything. We should have a student handbook that all of our players, as well as all of our students, equipment managers, they receive it, just to make sure everybody is on the same page, whether you're an employee or a student athlete.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece, is making sure that there's written documentation that they have all the best policies and procedures in the world, but if you don't know if people read them, problem. So thanks, John. Next, Ariana.
Yeah, I think everyone has good points already, so I won't reiterate what's already been said. But the biggest thing for us is that it just gives purpose for what we do and why we do it a specific way. Then there's a frame of reference to go back to when you have to either show someone why we do these things this way, or correcting behaviors for student managers. It gives you a baseline and something just to fall back onto, instead of just, oh, well, I told you one time. It's actually written paper to pen. And I also give it to my students, and then it's kind of something fun to do during camp, during football. We always do like a Kahoot or something to go back to, so that I can make sure that they're retaining the information and they know what we're doing and why we're doing it.
That's awesome. And Javon, we'll finish with you.
Yeah, so at literally every point that I was going to talk about, everyone has brought up something. But the biggest thing, like you said, is going back and, you know, having everything pen to paper or document or something like that, sharing it with the coaches. I do it quarterly. I share with my coaches quarterly. I'm only responsible for the equipment room in the stadium. Our other equipment rooms on the campus have their own kind of policies and procedures, but we have a core of, we call it the core four, that every single equipment room, those four stay the same, and they can pick and choose which ones they want to go to from that point. But the biggest one is showing our administration what we do, with our coaches what we do, and our student athletes how much we actually have to take care of by making sure those core four are in line in each equipment room, so everything is streamlined. But the last one is making sure that they see the dollar amounts of how much everything costs. With budget cuts coming here in California, that's the biggest thing right now, is getting them to understand that you can't just take your helmet home when you want to, or swap shoulder pads with somebody, or just little things like that. The biggest thing is the dollar amount, how much time it takes for us to do the job, and our administration get an understanding of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So the core four that we have here is really structured, and we follow it as strict as possible. We enforce it as strict as possible.
Thanks, Javon. Appreciate it. Great feedback there. Let's jump into the next question here. Describe your individual process in developing your procedures. I know it sounds like some of you it's working on it right now, so this would be great to get some information on it. Did you involve other departments, compliance, other administrators involved along the way, and how did they help? So this would be good to kind of get an idea of the importance of the entire department being involved. So Javon, we'll get to start with you, and then we'll work our way back.
We here at Mount SAC, we included our two senior or Tech 2s, which is myself and another equipment manager that takes care of the aquatic center. And then we added 4 coaches, one from each area that have the bigger rosters. And then we added 2 administrators. One is our compliance director. That's the biggest one. And then our assistant AD that oversees the equipment staff. those are, we felt like those are the people that, we have to meet with on a regular when it comes to rosters. Oh, last person was the trainers as well too, because how we do it here at Mount SAC within the core 4 of those policies and procedures, we don't issue out anything until every box is checked off. The trainers is the last one, the second to last, and then the compliance director is the last signature or check mark that we get until I can issue any shoulder pads or helmets, uniforms, making sure everybody's in classes and things like that. So those are the people that we included in that, making those decisions strategically with the core 4. And it helped tremendously. Prior to me getting here, they've had to forfeit some games because student athletes were getting jerseys or and competing in competitions that were not even eligible to play because they got dropped from a class or they didn't have something figured out. So it helped tremendously having it here. I had it at my last institution and brought some of those things that I learned there over here. And they were like, this is great. This is something that we needed that we didn't have in the past. So it's helped out tremendously.
Awesome. Great feedback. Ariana?
So we have 2 policy and procedure manuals, one for our internal equipment full-time staff. That was already in place when I got here, and that's something that we use to just follow what we do and why we do it, and who we buy things from, and also just the chain of command. And then the student policy and procedure manual I actually built from the ground up here. So I'm currently working on the student manager program. That I just use basically my experience and other people's manuals. So I got from other institutions in the Big Sky, other institutions that I've been at previously, to kind of make something that falls within line with our current policy and procedure manual, but also something that adheres to that student. I review it yearly. I review it based on changes within the athletic department and procedures that have changed. With everything always ever changing in the NCAA, I think it's really good to continue to revalue and reassess everything that you're doing.
That's a great point. We are in a world of change right now for sure. John, would you add any light that you have to share here?
Yeah, I mean, for us, like kind of like what Ari said, and it's kind of one of those things that's always going to change. I mean, that's the one thing that's consistent in our business. Nothing stays the same. So we kind of look at ours. We've talked about trying to figure out how to completely set one, but at the same point too, with everything changing every year, we're still trying to figure out, what we want to do and how we're going to do it. So we're still working on that part. But when it comes to the policy and procedures, I have a monthly meeting with our deputy AD. I go meet with him once a month. We kind of talk about some things that are going on in the equipment room, how, whether it's with coaches, athletes, stuff like that, just so that way everybody's on the same page and nothing comes up as a surprise. With our stuff, that when we started breaking everything down, I mean, our financial officer, he's the one that we go and sit down with. So that way everybody is on the same page. Like, hey, here's what we're looking at for the exact budgets, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're trying to get everything so everybody's on the same page. There's nothing that's going to pop up and scare anybody. And then lastly, with the compliance stuff, I mean, we meet with them. Our compliance officer is really great about coming down, talking to us, kind of keeping us updated. We get daily emails from them, working with them. And then for when we go to check out our gear and all that stuff too, I mean, we're the last ones our players see. Like, they don't even come to us until they get signed off by compliance, by the training room, by academics. And then once we get that, like, we don't even issue gear until we get our final email from them. So we have set times that are usually our kids will come in. Our compliance guys will let us know, hey, here's the most up-to-date thing. So we'll have check-in times for these guys to come in and come see us. So that way we can bring that email up and be like, oh, hey, Josh, you're not cleared yet. You still got to go work with training. Or Ari, you still need to go see compliance and check that out. So we're always working with those guys. So that way nobody's left out. We don't run into any issues. So we're always trying to make sure that we're the last ones. We have that final email, and getting it every day from our compliance office has been huge.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And Katie, would you add in?
Yeah, so we're still like in early process of recreating our policies and procedures. So right now it's just our 4-member equipment staff. So we're doing Moby, which is our Olympic side, and then Canvas will do their own too. And then from there we'll meet with compliance, HR, business office, to make sure like parts that apply to them are that we're matching what their expectations are, and then it'll go through like the exec staff approval process just for like on their end. But for the most things that we have in ours, it really is just like based on our knowledge and stuff. So we kind of debated this a couple times, that like, is it technically a policies and procedures, or just like a note, like a overarching like what our room knows kind of thing, because it's not necessarily policies, not just procedures. It's just a lot of information. I think by the end of it, ours will be fairly long, with parts that we've pulled out to share. So compliance has a student handbook that they send out. And so we have part of what goes into our policies and procedures, like our portion that applies to compliance, we've already sent and added to their handbook. So it's the same language in both sides. So we've done that a couple times of like provided, like, here's what we put in our thing to add to yours as well, just to kind of keep it consistent with wording and stuff. And then we've sat with coaches and just said like, hey, what are your expectations? Here are my expectations. Let's match them, so that in our policies, they look the same. So kids are never surprised when something comes down the line.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. And we'll finish up with you, Larry.
I think the group's made some great points on the engagement of areas outside our department, for their buy-in, for their communication, for their investment in us, because it works both ways. For the group talk about talking to coaches, compliance was a big one. I'd say that's one of our best offenders here at Kansas, as far as our student manager program and those details, is our compliance department. Human resources, since we're talking about items that impact personnel and your staff, investing them in, hey, would you mind reviewing this? I know a lot more of our schools have this next position now than it had when I started doing this 30 years ago, and that's an in-house attorney, your own counsel. We actually have 2 now. So I'll run things by them. Hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of the language? Again, that's their job in those positions. And if somebody does have an issue with a procedure, student athlete on their way out takes a parting shot, an exit interview, you have a falling out with a student manager, those procedures that are, well, I didn't know you had policies and procedures, Larry. I wish I could have reviewed those. So to stay ahead of those moments. And then we brought up sports. Someone mentioned admin and sports med. So those are all key ones as you build this out, the differentiation between some of your internal operational ones, as well as your external service related policies. And it's going to evolve. When we started our student manager program in 2009, the policies and procedures was 1 page. Now, 15 years later, it's about 9 pages. Like anything else, like every rule, you didn't have a policy, and then there's a mistake made or an oversight. Well, now we got to have a policy for that. And we evolve with it. But I agree with the group on we share our policies and procedures a lot. It's part of our onboarding for our prospective student managers. And so I'm giving this multiple looks in the course of the year. I just had some notes this morning because I need to do a summer update before we hit the fall, on some updates that just hit compliance and impact student managers across the country that I want to make sure are in our documentation going forward.
That's great advice, Larry. I think the other thing I'll pass along, just putting my compliance hat back on a little bit, is the biggest piece of advice I've ever received outside of the department was from institutional compliance. So if you guys have institutional compliance on campus, they're a big help, kind of like your in-house attorneys. But never, the advice I got from them was, don't ever write a policy that you can't follow through on, or a procedure that you can't follow through on, because those are the ones that'll come back and bite you in the worst way. It's something to put in grave detail is great, but if you can't follow through on it, then it becomes a problem. So anyway,
hey, Josh, that's a great point. There's some things I have simplified over time. Like I'd love to be more stringent on this detail, but I really can't be. Like some of this was GPA related. Like, you know what? If the university says they're in and they're still enrolled, I'm I'm backing off on some of that. Like just as an example, there's just some things to keep it simple and enforceable so we aren't staring at the documentation all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next question here. What are the main topics that are covered in your policies and procedures? I know we've talked a lot about student manager stuff or working with coaches, but when it comes to you get in granular as far as issuing and returning items. You talk about time frames. Do you talk about who's allowed in the room? Those types of things. So, Larry, we'll start with you, and if you could kind of go over some of the main topics that are covered, because I'm sure someone's going to say a topic that everyone's going to be looking at. You're like, oh, we should probably look at that. So, Larry, we'll start with you and work our way back.
Well, I think I don't want the staff paralyzed in basic services. I don't want them, well, wait a minute, what happened there, and start looking it up. So some of this is repetition, setting an example, upperclassmen and GAs or whatever, setting example for your newcomers along the way. So repetition and practice. So some of these things are automatic. And we get everybody used to it handling the same way. I said here, make your procedures habit forming, and then with consistent enforcement and affirmation. If they get it wrong, let's correct it. If they get it right, make sure they know that. I appreciate that. That's how we want it done. It can be done directly. It can be done a little lightheartedly, but one way or another that we're setting a standard. And also understanding not every decision is yours or mine to make, and empowering everybody with these are the decisions you can make. And these are the ones that are above your pay grade. So bring it to me. And it hits my plate. That I'll make the decision. Nope. On that one, it's got to go up. It's got to go up to the sport administrator. It's got to go to my boss. It's got to go to the AD. So I think as we've gone through is making sure everyone understands the decisions that are ours and those that we refer up the chain, but also empowering with the decisions that you can make. You understand if the status in the laundry room or an athlete comes and asks for this is how we handle that. And if that's not how it's being handled, now we got to ask a question. So a lot of my education with the student athletes is if you come to the window and with XYZ, no problem. But if you don't, or there's an outlier situation where now you're jamming up the system here. So now it's going to upset our level of service to you. So just come with, so setting those expectations early in the year with our student athletes for what we expect along the way and those details and what they're going to get, and aligning that with the services for your staff. Again, I hate wasting a student athlete's time at the window. Don't tell them no when it's not your job to tell them no, and that ask me for, hey, we might have more of this someplace else. Don't say, well, you got to come back later. Like, wait a minute. Let's have some communication here. And so not wasting their time, not wasting a coach's time. Some of those details along the way are incredibly important, and you say it over again and you abide by it, it becomes religion internally.
Awesome. Thanks, Larry. Katie, are you back? Oh, she had to hop off. Oh,
I'm here. So I'm here. Sorry. So kind of, I know a lot of things are going to be the same. So I'm going to kind of hit like a couple of mine that are a little different in our policies and procedures. I don't know how most schools do their student workers, but ours are all work study. So obviously that's through FAFSA, and we pay out a portion of their pay. It actually doesn't come from my equipment room budget. It comes from the team's budgets. So we have it broken down where the teams are paying for my students. And so one of the biggest complaints we get at the end of every year when we're looking at budgets is, why am I paying so much for people that don't actually do anything for me? And then we have to explain, my students actually do a lot for you. You just don't see them every day. And so in our policies and procedures, I actually have written where they can, like if a coach asks, we can send them that as part of the document. Explaining why they pay for my students in the breakdown of like the percentage, because teams are like, oh, well, like I don't do you don't do that much for me. Like, why is my percentage this? And I'm like, well, here's everyone's percentage. So we have full transparency of who's paying for what, or like for how much and why, like what my students do. And I have it broken down like, okay, for soccer, my students do X, Y, and Z. They might not be on your field, but they are the reason you guys are making it to the field in your uniform every day. So that's one big one that we've seen the need for in our policies and procedures. And then the other big one is just like something that's in our policy and procedures that necessarily isn't a policy. It's just our calendar. So we have a general calendar where it breaks down, you know, what we do monthly, essentially, what we're required to keep our room running. And then we also have, each team has a monthly calendar for tasks that we have to accomplish for them for that one, so things don't fall through the cracks. We kind of saw this come out of COVID when we were having to cover each other's teams, like, oh, you're quarantined, what do I need to be doing at this time? Or, you know, people taking vacations, things like that. Like what do we need to do? So it's easy to find out. And then my students can also look and say, hey, during this month, I know X, Y, and Z needs to get accomplished. So we found that just kind of helps keep us sane, trying to remember, not having to remember what we do each time of the year, but it's just all there for us. So those are kind of some unique ones that we have in ours.
Thanks, Katie. And John?
So, I mean, kind of like what Larry and Katie were both saying. I mean, we have certain things that we get done, you know, our kids understand, like, here is, before we even go do X, Y, and Z, here's what has to be done every day, no matter what. You know, our laundry, we have some kids that just do laundry only because of their class schedule. I mean, their first job as soon as they walk into the door is to double check the lint traps, go through, make sure there's no laundry sitting, something to get missed. I mean, we constantly are having kids come in and do that. And one of the biggest things that I found out when I first started, and one of my mentors that I learned from, I mean, the biggest thing he ever told me is I'm never going to ask any of my students to do something I won't do myself. So whether it's cleaning lint traps, doing laundry, like, and it shows, like, if you can do the small stuff too, your kids can't complain about it. So, I mean, that's something that we preach hard, is like, hey, we're going to be out at practice. We're going to help you guys snap footballs. We're going to run chains. We're going to do all the stuff that, you know, it's not the glory stuff. So, I mean, doing that, it really helps, because then our kids can't come back and be like, well, you know, when they leave or they're gone or graduate, whatever, there's nothing they can really say because they're seeing us do that stuff. So that's our big thing, is we're always preaching to our students, like, hey, we're going to help you out. And like Larry said, there's certain things that kids aren't allowed to do. You know, it's like you said, it's above their pay grade. That's mine and my assistant Jarrett. That's our job to handle that kind of stuff, and we're going to take care of that for them.
Yeah, I think that's great, John. I think the other thing to look at too is, you know, we're not just protecting the kids, we're protecting ourselves. It comes two-way when we come to that kind of stuff. So that's great advice. Ariana, would you go ahead and share?
I think one of the important things that we have in our policies and procedures manual is what each individual in the equipment room does, and who to go to if you need to order chemicals, or who to go to if our cart needs services. So everyone has their unique individual administrative role, and clearly defining that so each individual in the room knows, I think, is important. On top of that, we have daily, weekly, monthly checklists, and I think it's just a good frame of reference that our students should be doing this on a daily basis. They should be doing this on a weekly basis. It also gives a job responsibility description, so then they know and can use that for their resumes or for stuff like that. I think it just gives good language. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Ariana. We'll finish with Javon. You're muted, bud.
Sorry about that. Biggest thing, like Ariana said, is the daily, weekly, and monthly. I have some student workers here that basically apply to work within the equipment room. They get an opportunity to pick which one they would like to work in. Over here, I take care of football, track and field, and cross country. I have some of the bigger sports. So they get an opportunity to pick out of the job descriptions that they want. And in the job description, it tells them what they would do daily, weekly, and monthly. And that's one of the key components. The biggest one for us that is not in the core 4 that we go off of is basically in the policy and procedures is your attitude. Your attitude is really, really big when it comes to servicing student athletes. because it's all customer service based, basically. And we don't know what our student athletes are going through on a daily basis when they walk through these halls or walk through these doors before they get to the locker room. The only positive thing that they might see before they go to practice is us in the equipment room, just saying hello, what's up, how's your day going, everything good? It's the little things like that that is really big outside of our core four when it comes to our policies and procedures. But the weekly, daily, and monthly is a big thing when it comes to laundry. My equipment assistants, first thing is laundry. We got to get laundry done. We got to make sure that we're on schedule and on time. Being on time is 20 minutes ahead, and late is being there right when everything starts. So those are the biggest things that for our policies and procedures outside of the core four.
Thanks, Siobhan. We'll jump into the next question here. How do you ensure the safety and security of equipment within the equipment room? Basically, if you have anything in your policy procedures that lights that up, that'd be great to share. And can you determine kind of how you're gonna go about to outline who has access to your equipment room, and what measures are you going to make sure that security stays in place? So, Javon, we'll start with you and work our way back. Go ahead, bud.
The biggest thing that I've tried to do since starting here over at Mount Sac is identify who has keys to the equipment room. I think that's the hardest one. We have a brand new stadium, brand new building. I was not the equipment manager here when the building opened 3 years ago. So when I first got here and started to identify who had keys and who had access to what in my area was the first phase of our remodel in our athletic department. So the other buildings weren't even done yet. So the other 3 equipment managers had a say so in who had access. But I reached out to my athletic director. I got with our director of facilities and said, hey, let me show you how much this equipment is worth and how much I have in my helmet tracker system of how much money is spent and we have in this room. And they determined that, hey, we're only going to give access to head coaches, administrators, and basically our head trainer to make sure that things don't go missing, because I have the laundry facility connected to my equipment room as well too. So trainers come in and do towels. The head trainer comes in, brings the towels, drops them off, and they basically leave. We had a couple of issues where things were being taken, things were being moved, and I didn't know who was coming in and out. So I just took it upon myself to just place a "Hey, smile, you're on camera" sign right and at the front door. And I put a blink camera basically at the top of basically where everybody can see it right when they walk in, so I can know who's coming in and out, because things were just going missing, and it's something that I worked on the night before I left and got back in the morning and it was gone. So that was the biggest thing. I'm still trying to identify who still has keys. Our college is pretty old, and we have a lot of people. We have a lot of turnover with the locksmith as well too. So I've worked with my AD and our director of facilities to try to, as these people start to retire, they're actually collecting the keys and I'm not just passing them off to somebody else.
That's great. Thanks, Javon. Ariana?
So no one has keys unless they're a full-time equipment staff person in our equipment room. The master key does not work for the equipment room door. That is something that we ensure that other individuals do not have access to it. My equipment room here up at the stadium has an alarm, so that can be set when we leave for longer periods of time. I think the rule of thumb is always close the door behind you if you're the last person in the room, making sure that you actually shut the door. Sometimes our door gets stuck because we're outside, so it can get kind of stuck in the wind, so you have to ensure that it closes behind you. Another thing that I do that kind of ensures the safety, but also lets people know where I am. We have a sign on the door because our laundry room is not connected to our equipment room, so I often have to leave to go do other parts of my job. Obviously, that's one of the biggest things that we do. So then that lets people know where to find me. I always close the laundry room door at the end of the day. don't keep anything in there that I would want anyone to walk off with. And then our office space here actually has a code to the door. So this is the only space that my students have access to. I just don't keep things that I wouldn't want to go missing in this room. The code also can be changed. So if someone is removed from staff and I'm worried about their access to this room, I would change it.
Perfect. Thank you for chiming in. John?
Yeah, so we just recently got our whole building rekeyed. And that was really nice, just being able to go through and take everybody's key away. So now we only have access to a couple people. I mean, we got rid of a lot of spare keys laying around that people had. So we were able to really lock it down and kind of keep access. I mean, we have one spare key that we keep in one of our laundry cubbies just to kind of help our night laundry guys, because we don't give anybody else keys. It's just me and my assistant. And then we have one of our ADs has a key to help just in case something goes awry, we're gone. So that way somebody has access if they need it. So our students are able to use that key to get in to come do their jobs when we're out. So that's kind of how we keep everything locked down. I mean, our equipment room, everything's connected. The laundry room, we have laundry chutes that our athletes turn stuff into. We have to go get coaches' laundry from the second floor. So, I mean, it's just kind of one of those things. We just really make sure if you're the only one here, lock up, bring the key with you. So that's kind of the big thing with us is we're just always making sure that things are locked down, ready to go. So that way, like Javon said, if you're coming in the next day, nothing's walked off mysteriously.
That's great, John. Thank you. Katie?
So in our Olympic equipment room, all of our doors are accessed by a physical key. So only my assistant and I have a key. And then we also have one in facilities, like he has a spare key because I'm notorious for accidentally locking myself out of my office. So he has a spare key, mostly for me. And then our laundry room is separate than our equipment room. That room, there is a key for it, and like we each have one, and then we have like one in a lockbox on the laundry room door, and then our men's basketball managers have a key for it. It's not the most secure, like the laundry chute, you can reach your arm through and like pop open the door. So it's not the most secure room in the world. So we have a cage where like if we're drying uniforms, it gets locked so that there is like a second level of security in the laundry room, but our laundry room is not a secure space at all. So we try not to leave anything in there for an extended period of time. Now at the football building, all of that is like scan key card access, and they kind of limit who has access there. This year they did have a problem with a recruiting staff member climbing through the laundry chutes when they'd forget to ask for something. And then instead of texting one of the equipment people, they would just like climb through the laundry chute and take whatever they wanted. So then that caused the whole issue. And so they had to put some security in there. So just kind of explaining to staff like why it's not okay just to let yourself in our space. I think that's been it feels like a no-brainer, but like we have that conversation a lot. Like you guys don't have free reign to our space. But yeah, our building definitely could be more secure. It is not a secure facility whatsoever.
And I think that's a good point. I'm sure a lot of people on this call are in that same space, in that same place where not everything is on lockdown and under key card. So, Larry, would you chime in and finish this one out?
Yeah, great points here along the way. I know when I got to UConn, I changed the locks in all the equipment rooms, and it was amazing the number of people that said, you changed the locks, or can I get one? Well, why? Now I was 24 years old, so they didn't like hearing that from the young whippersnapper, but there were a few comments, well, if the AD needs something and I can just sneak over, I live right here. And I was like, well, I just got a house 6 minutes from campus. He can call me now. We're good. Those were sometimes challenging conversations with people that had decades at UConn before I got there, but it helped shake the trees. So if you've got support to do that, I know that helped a great deal. It sounds like some folks have done that here also. Our policy, and it's supported by our administrator, is no coaches or teams or anyone has access to the equipment rooms. Laundry facilities, we will share mop heads, those kind of things at Rock Chalk Park or something like that. But generally here, and our facilities people don't want them. They house the keys for the department, But they want no part of the responsibility, nor do they want people calling them for access. So they steer clear, no sports med, no coaches. We had a director of ops at football ask for key access, and when are we not here to provide for you? And no other director of ops has them. And our administration, I don't want to say sided, but supported us in that detail. It was pointed out by Ari earlier. It's off the master. What we have here are SKDs, or special key distributions. So all the equipment rooms are on separate. So even if they need to do some plumbing work or something like that, they have to do it when our staff is here. A master key won't work. Someone mentioned it earlier, I believe, whenever possible, when you get the chance, separating the laundry facility from the rest of the main storage area is super convenient. And I wish, honestly, because so many things can be shared or lost, that I'd love to do biometric sensors that we have in certain places here, but just not an expense I've been able to get prioritized for the equipment areas. But I'd certainly, since you can't, tough to lose your fingerprints in the whole process, that would certainly simplify everything. But there's a 4-figure expense to each of those doors in a lot of cases, and I haven't been able to push that one through yet. But great points here from everybody on kind of shielding yourself and making very limited access, which also forces directors of ops and teams, to Katie's point, of actually communicating schedules. It's not free access. You actually need to include us in communication because you don't have 24-hour access. So happy to be here. We understand Saturdays and evenings are part of it, but you actually need to include us in the scheduling and have a plan A and a plan B. So I think that access forces that consideration.
Thanks, Larry. I know we're running tight on time, and there's a couple questions, comments that came through the chat that I want to get to. I think one of them, or a couple of them, actually revolved around the idea of getting coaches or staff members buy-in, outside of your department, buy-in to following said procedure or policy. And just want to kind of find whoever wants to jump on and take it, who has had that interaction, who has maybe failed that interaction and learned from it. Is there anybody on the panel that would be willing to answer that?
I'll start with the buy-in from the coaches. When I got to my current school at Mount Sac, there was some bad blood between the equipment staff and some of the teams and the coaches. But I think they realized really quickly that I was very organized, I was strategic, and I wanted to make an impact, because without the equipment staff, it was hard for them to coach. It was hard for them to schedule. And it was hard for our student athletes to get the things that they needed so they can participate in competition and in practice, and to get to class on time. So my biggest thing is scheduling. Issuing equipment became a lot easier. Setups for practice became a lot easier. They didn't like it at first. I just kept bothering them when it came to, hey, I need to know what time you guys are practicing. I need to know what time you guys like to have your stuff ready for travel. For football, is the biggest one, was issuing that equipment to student athletes. They didn't have a system. All they did was, hey, we're going to send you all of our top guys at once. And I'm like, I'm not going to have everybody's a top guy at the collegiate level, and then they bring their friends or their roommates, and then you have 80 guys sitting in the hallway asking for gear. So what I did is I implemented appointments. I used a simple app called Calendly, to where I'm able to ask all the questions ahead of time, to build their loops with their sizes, with their practice pants, girdles, socks, everything that they needed. And I held our coaches accountable by, hey, I need to know what jersey number the student athletes are wearing. So please give me a roster with jersey numbers, please. At least if you have guys that you don't know, that's fine. Just give me your top 60 or whatever, and we'll do them by position groups, and give me, I'll send you the link. They make appointments. They come when they adjust their appointment around their class schedule, around treatment, film, everything. But it streamlined the process. And once our coaches started to see how much easier it was, and how many student athletes didn't complain, that's when the buy-in came, like, okay, he's actually preparing ahead of time and trying to save time so he can get to other things that are important as well too. So we're not late for practice and things are already set up. So it's just about being organized, and also setting boundaries, because we're not there 24 hours a day. Some of us are only allowed at the JUCO level to work 8 hours a day with no overtime or comp time on the books. So it's just about being strategic, and planning and scheduling is the biggest one, and that's how I got the buy-in that I needed.
I think the biggest thing to take away too, Javon, is the fact that you not only have a set policy procedure, but there's also like this outcome. If you follow it, we're going to have a better outcome. And I think with any policies and procedures buy-in, it's, and I'm not comparing coaches to children, so don't take this from this call and please send this to people, but it's a lot like, talking to your children. Hey, we want you to do this so you can get this later or be this person later. It's the same thing with administrators, children, coaches. Hey, if you want me to do this for you, it needs to be done this way so I can do it the way you want it to be done.
And definitely it helps also with, like forecasting things, with me being proactive with scheduling and getting things ahead of time, planning 3, 4, 5 weeks ahead. I'm like, hey coach, if you do it this way, like I'll be able to help you do this thing that you've always wanted to get done. It gives me at least time to do it or get to it that the last person or the last staff wasn't able to do. So it's dangling the carrot, basically. That's all.
Another question came in kind of revolving around the whole storage solution situation. A lot of boxes are flowing in. You don't have space in your space to hold them. Anybody have a solution? Are you locking them in a trailer somewhere, or how are you keeping them secure if you don't have space for them? Anybody having that problem on the panel?
Yeah, I can talk to that. So we actually get a pod every summer. Well, our first summer was last summer, but going forward, we're gonna get a pod every summer. Where like I have like it's a padlock. We have the combination, just our staff does. So it's not always the best solution. It's hot here, like kind of sucks to be out in the pod sometimes, but it's just the most secure location outside of our rooms. Like we just don't have the space, and we aren't able to like reserve a locker room because they're being used during the summers. There's just not a great system besides having our external pod. Unfortunately, on the Olympic side football, they've got a lot of space and they're able to have a couple closets and stuff that they can lock down and separate. And because they're scanned key card access, they can change the access during the summers and then change it back.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. Just the sake of time, I want to give our president Melly a few minutes here before we close out. Melly, are you on?
I am. Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Awesome. Thank you so much. Another great turnout here. We've got 145 people on this Zoom, and I just want to give a shout out to all of you who put this together. And I think it's just been a real terrific addition to the AEMA, and I thank you very much. As you all know, this weekend we're really excited to be hosting a really significant event. It's our golden anniversary of conventions. It's 50 years of bringing equipment managers together and industry professionals, and it's this weekend starting. Hi, Roxanne. Always like to give you a shout out on these Zooms. Bringing equipment managers together, and we're going to be staying at the Marriott Marquis in downtown Atlanta. It's really conveniently located right in the heart of downtown, and it's really accessible from the airport. So if you just hop on the MARTA, the train, and you get off at the Peachtree Center stop, I think it's like a 20-minute train ride, and it'll cost you about $3. You can also grab obviously an Ubers, and for those of you driving, good luck in the traffic I hear that Atlanta has. So it's 50 years, right? This is our premier event annually, is always our national convention. And bringing people together is really what brings me great joy, is seeing everybody year after year who got more gray hair, You know, who's where and when and what changes have transpired over the years. I've made some of my closest friends over the years through professional athletic equipment manager conventions. So I hope that you're joining us, and if you haven't, show up. We'll take you. We'll grab you. We're going to have an inspiring keynote address from Josh Brooks, who is the athletic director at the University of Georgia. We're going to obviously have the certification exam and breakout sessions for all levels, all sports. So it's going to be, the program committee did a really good job with that. We're going to have extensive vendor exhibits. They're going to be showcasing the latest equipment and technology. I invite everyone to work those vendor rooms because vendors are the lifeblood of our organization. That's how we can kind of afford to host a national convention. And it also keeps our membership fees down and attendance of the convention fees down. It's really a really good deal. We're going to have a tour of the College Football Hall of Fame and social events every evening. And Sunday night after the general board meeting, we're going to have a really poppin' party. I hope you bring your dance shoes because I'm going to be showing mine. We're also going to have 50th anniversary celebrations and commemorative gifts. So Scoot has done a really good job. We're going to have some swag bags waiting for you guys. So leave a little room in your travel bags for goodies. If you're attending, I give all of you an invitation to engage with one another. Some of my most memorable conventions were the ones where I got out of myself and kind of pushed my boundaries of comfort. Surprisingly, I am kind of an extroverted introvert, and I really got out of myself and introduced myself to people, networked. And that's really what it's all about. And so the most rewarding ones was like, wow, I made a couple new friends. I've learned a couple new things, and that's what the convention's all about. So I invite you to engage with one another, with your district directors in your district meetings. Talk, engage with any ideas you might have. Your voice is critical to me and to our organization. It's not my vision, it's our vision. So whatever you can do to engage with your district director in the general meeting, I really invite you because I really want to get your feedback and hear your ideas. And most importantly, again, those vendors are the lifeblood of our organization. So thank you for hearing me out. Our organization has been cooking for 50 years, and it's probably started with all my fingers and toes at the very first national convention. And look what it's grown to. And we got some growing to go yet. It's a pivotal time in our organization, and I'm forward thinking. I'm not backward thinking. And so hopefully you guys will hear my speech at the general board meeting and be happy with where we're going. And the AEMA really wants to strive to be your voice, your supporter, and your home. So those are the things that I really want you to take away from this conversation right now, is that we're your home professionally. And I wish safe travels to everyone, and I will see you in Atlanta. Roxanne, you know of the best diners in Atlanta? Got any good recommendations for restaurants?
Been a while since I've been in Atlanta, and I have to say no at this point.
All right. Well, I hope to see all of you there. It's not too late. We got a surprise visit. Stick's going to be there on Sunday at the general board meeting. We've got lots of things happening. I'm really excited, and a lot of people worked really hard to put this together. Sam and Kelly, Matt and Chris and Katrina and District 3, the host district. I really want to thank all of you for putting this together, and safe travels, and I shall see you this weekend.
Thanks, Melly. Here's the QR code for everybody wanting to get credit for being in attendance. And we will see you in a few days. Thanks, everybody. All right, final call before I shut her down, guys. Make sure you get the QR code.